Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Explicit Measures podcast with Tommy, Seth, and Mike. Here we are, rounding out the end of the year. Welcome, everyone. Here we go.
It is happy end of 2021. 21.
Oh boy.
We're running.
Whoa, slow down.
Whoa, easy there. Trying to erase an entire year from my memory already. Goodness gracious, Tommy.
We're on episode 192.
Yeah, exactly. We are on episode 70, so this is a kind of a big moment for us. I mean, as we look back on the year, we kind of decided partly into this year, like a podcast should be a thing. And I didn't know initially how long this thing was going to last. If it was going to be a couple episodes and, this doesn't fit very well, or actually going to go, do well or keep moving forward. So yeah, 70, I think is a pretty good number.
Such confidence, Mike. Such confidence. It's still in our listeners. However, I think the shift in that mentality, Mike, has probably been we're just getting started, right?
Right. I hope so.
We're in it for the long haul.
We haven't seen anything yet that has sent us to cancel culture yet, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah. We haven't said it yet.
We haven't said it yet.
Keep it middle of the road, gents.
Right.
with a name like Explicit.
Yeah, with Explicit Measures. Yeah.
This is the most. We probably got folks coming in for the explicit part and just being like, "This is the most tame stuff ever. These guys aren't even fighting."
To which we would reply, "Go to the next episode. You'll probably find it."
Well, yeah, maybe.
Awesome. Tommy, you were doing some numbers here over the last couple of days, I guess, with some time off here. You want to give us some stats here at the end of the year?
Yeah, so this is, like I said, we put in 65 hours minimum because every episode, we initially, when we started, we were like, let's do 30-minute podcasts twice a week. And it's always at least an hour now because we can't.
We clearly realized that was a mistake right from the beginning. Yeah. 30 minutes is not nearly long enough for to make fun of each other. What
we realized, and we would like to tell the audience too, if you're bored, like 20 minutes in listening to it, just go to like minute 32 of any episode, and that's when it gets good.
I'd agree.
Yeah,
I think the conversation really thickens up around that 25-30 minute mark is where we
the ones that start slow. Yeah. So, and I think to your point, like what are people going to say to this? It's amazing how many people have been listening. If you actually do the math on how many people watch on YouTube and then the actual podcast itself, just putting some numbers in with 65 hours of content, we've basically wasted a collective of 4 years of people's time.
Boom.
Listening.
That's
us.
And that's not just 4 years of like 8 to 5. That's 4 years of
no sleep.
No sleep. That's like
true binge.
Continuous, nonstop. So the numbers astound me when you start saying stuff like that. Even looking at YouTube metrics or things about that, how many hours of content has been consumed. We have a small channel. We're not as big as some of these other channels. I can't imagine the number of hours that people have consumed content on these platforms. It's absolutely astounding to me. So here's to 4 years of people listening to us blabber.
Yeah.
We thank you for your time.
Hopefully we're striking the right balance. So our whole intent here is to have these candid conversations about our experiences with Power BI. It's also around just having fun. Like we want to have candid, interesting conversations, and so part of this is entertainment. The other half of this is something hopefully informative, helping give you some other areas of Power BI to think about or to mull over. So, anyways,
and that's the feedback we get from you guys is. It's fun. It's not just informative, but it makes me think in a different way, and it's entertaining. Like we have people binging it, and it's like, that's amazing.
What are you doing?
Yeah,
wasting too much time.
Yeah, which I say, go on Netflix for that.
Awesome. So this episode's topic is going to be kind of around taking a reflection on what we did in 2021 and looking forward to 2022, and kind of putting together what would be our New Year's resolutions. What are the things we're going to do for the first month of the year and then stop doing after that and for the rest of the year. So,
is that how your resolutions go, Mike?
They kind of ebb and flow.
Is there a cycle or a pattern there?
Well, that's what most people do, right? The gyms are the most packed in every part of the year. At this, January, the gyms are always packed. And then by February, March, they're not so packed anymore.
That's right.
Maybe I'm just being a realist, right? Just be real, right? Make easy goals.
Then let's have a little more fun with this. I'm sure we have multiple resolutions, but I think there needs to be at least 2 that we're going to hold each other accountable for the year.
Ooh.
So I will be my brother's keeper, so to speak.
You're you're already making an assumption, Tommy, that I have more than 2.
Well, then this is gonna be pretty short episode.
Highly unlikely.
Highly unlikely.
Yeah.
There's lots of little things that are rolling around in my head all the time. Things I want to improve, things I want to do. It's a matter right now. Again, I don't know how everyone else's career or perspective on life changes, but for me, a lot of this has been time. Right, time becomes very valuable to you as you go through your career, as you do lots of things, as you work on different things. It's a balancing act. I just listened to a YouTube video. I don't know if you guys watch. Well, I watch probably too much YouTube as it is, uh, giving them my fair share of hours. But on YouTube, Rob Dietrich, I think is his name. He was the skateboarder who turned kind of like venture capitalist recently. I don't know if
That's a story you don't.
have you heard about this guy?
Nope.
So I watched someone was interviewing him. It was like an article they interviewed him with. Rob was a skateboarder. He did the Fantasy Factory and has made some MTV shows. And from that, he has really talked about how he is monitoring every single minute, hour, time of everything he does. I thought this really resonated with me. He was being very like intentional about. He tracks all his time. At the very beginning of the year, he makes up like goals that says, "Hey, I'm going to spend 30% of my time with my family, 30% of my time working, 10% of my time working out, and another whatever 20% of the time sleeping." So he's every 24 hours for every day. He's optimized every single piece of that. So it was a very fascinating kind of documentary interview with him. He seems like a very interesting person based on the interview. So I thought it was very interesting. And as a kid, I remember watching. I don't know if did you guys ever watch Robin Big? Oh my gosh, man, double whammy here.
Island, man.
Keep teaching.
Yeah.
Anyways,
I like it.
I just thought it was very interesting. I liked his intentionality of his time. I liked his intentionality of we only have a limited amount of this, and I think this is the reason why. And personally as our family, right? We sit down every year and we make goals for the year as a family. Some personal, spiritual ones, financial goals, and I think it's important to write those down. So I guess this is going to be our public writing down of our Power BI goals. What do we want to do there?
I do like that thought, though. We've talked about schedule being, schedule it, give yourself time to learn.
Yeah.
And things like
totally
that.
agree with that.
And at first glance, it kind of, I think the knee jerk reaction when you hear, a guy is down to the minute planning his day, like, oh man, like that's a bit excessive. But at the same time, like, is it? Or is it just an actual representation of managing your time the best way you can? Because
Right.
ultimately that just becomes habit, right? Like you're creating a habit that no matter what, you just adhere to. And if you're going to push and pull, you probably can, right? Within that framework, but you've set yourself up more for success, I think, than leaving it on a higher level sometimes,
And I think that this goes into a
check
lot
'em
of
out.
things that we've talked about, and probably resolutions too, where we're all like our biggest strength is our biggest weakness, where we can all go into different rabbit holes. And a lot of times there's probably a threshold or a cutoff point when it doesn't become productive. I could probably get a lot of these tackled, a lot of things I wrote down or things that I want to do next year if I dedicate the different time. Say I don't need to spend 7 hours on this one project because I can break it up into 2 days. And I just, dedicate 2 hours to building, something that I've wanted to work on, but only the 2 hours. It's probably a good idea, but I think it's creating that structure and that is a habit change in your life.
I would agree. And the interesting, so the reason I'm bringing up this whole Rob thing, which is interesting to me, he was reading a book that kind of changed his perspective, and Seth, being the avid reader that he is, I'll throw out the book out there. I may or may not read it. It may have to be a goal for me in order for me to actually read it. I'm just not I'm not good at finishing things. Let's say that. I'll get into books and I'm like, oh, okay, I kind of get the gist. It was a good book. I'm done. As opposed to actually finishing. Yeah.
Love the book.
Love the book. You start repeating yourself in the book, I'm done. I'm out. But I believe the book's name was Start at the End. And so it basically is think about where you want to land and then work backward from there. And then once that's how you think about the end goal that you want. What do you want the proportion of family, work, and fun time to look like? And then from there, you can make your goals based on that, and then you allocate appropriate amounts of time. And so,
do you remember the
go ahead.
author? Do you remember the author
Oh, I'm gonna have to Google that one. I do not remember I just remember I wrote down the book title.
Okay.
Let's see,
Cool.
see if I can go find the book title here.
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, it looked interesting. On how they, start at the end. It's off of Amazon. Dave Levinsky looks like it. There's actually another one, Matt Walhart. So I'm not sure which one it is.
Okay.
Crap. Apparently that's a popular book name. So, anyways, so it seemed interesting. I'll have to go figure out what Rob was referring to, and then I'll share that link or something like that on the podcast later on.
Awesome.
Sweet.
Well, I am excited to hear your guys' resolutions.
I'm pretty sure they're not gonna be impressive. At least mine won't.
That's how we started the last episode.
I know, that's literally
like I started poo-pooing my ideas, and all of a sudden
it turned into something good.
The same thing with the
presents. So we'll
Mike,
see.
you are that guy going, I really didn't get you anything that nice. I got you 2 tickets to Disney.
So exactly.
Like,
already
it's
been
not
there,
much.
seen it.
It's not much.
Just a mouse, you know. Come on.
Yeah.
So Tommy, let's kick this off. Why don't you start? What is the first resolution? Do we want to go round robin here?
Let's do round robin. Okay. So, and I did not rank mine, so I think that's a little too difficult. But some of these I may group together, but because I started with 5s, I'm like, well, there may be a few more. So I'm going to ensure all my reports have anything that's published in my workspaces has the exact same layout and properties. That when we've talked about data labeling, when we've talked about style properties, there's times that you may modify one, but then you have to, don't go back. I'm going to make sure all of that is completely clean, and I'm going to ensure that every single title is manually. Well, actually, I think it was Donald who wrote something where if everything's titled, it actually can look worse because it from a layout point of view.
No, I agree. I'm just saying.
Yeah, but I'm gonna make sure that every title has a clear message.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, but I'm gonna go through all my alignments and all the properties to make sure that it all matches the visuals that are related to that. So
it's a hefty task depending on how many reports you get out there.
Quite a bit.
What are we looking at? 100?
Mine, probably 100, 150.
Whoa.
So.
Have fun with that.
It'd be nice if you had a tool that could automate that.
Yeah, that was my Christmas gift. I think, so.
That was your Christmas gift.
Yeah.
Too bad it's not real. You could actually just go through and do that.
Mike's resolution: Power BI tips will build an auto alignment.
Well, okay. Let's go back here to a bit. Your comment earlier was you like to try to control things with themes, right? So if you adjust those properties in a theme file, you can open up those 100 reports, apply the new theme with the new centered. So there's 2 parts to this, right? One part of this is just getting the formatting correct, and that would be the theme file could do that. The other hand is your other resolution is around making sure the name is descriptive enough of what the chart is doing.
Right.
That part cannot be automated. You actually have to go through each chart and kind of do that one. This is also one of these. I'm going to throw this one. This is a kind of a good talking point, maybe for Seth and I. Kind of, we've maybe debated this before. There comes a point where you just say, I'm changing my standard, and you just make the change, and moving forward, it becomes part of your checklist for all reports that you touch. Of those 100 reports that you have to do, there's a lot of tech debt to go back through and clean them all, right? For sure, moving forward, you do that. No problem. Any new reports, you're going to check it out. And I would also say on your revisions to older reports, potentially you go back through and say, okay, I'm going to update one of my checklist things on revising reports would be to update those titles so they make sense.
Right.
So that might be what you start with. And that way you don't have to touch, you're not overwhelmed with now I'm going to spend 2 weeks at the beginning of the year.
Right. Well, I'm going to start top down with our most used report.
That's a good approach. I like that. That's another good approach.
Yeah. I'm not going to start with something that gets 5 views a month.
Oh, totally.
That's
I like
good that you have that priority list.
Yeah.
Right? Because then you can probably bucket this task into others that as you start getting down into it was only viewed one time in the last 6 months. Do you really need that out there anymore? You can get review to Mike's point where you start removing stuff that's no longer necessary.
I like that one.
Or a lot of the times, like, we build reports and then another report has sort of the same information or a better version of that, and that's what would deprecate, one of your older reports.
Hmm.
But going through that,
Yeah.
it's a good one.
I'm trying to write down this note here. So, it's not only the formatting of the title, Tommy. You're also talking about like the content of the title.
Yeah. So like anything that's related on those properties to make sure that it is, it's from a consumer point of view, it's consumer friendly.
I have
So
sorry, this is an ancillary question. I'm thinking about this now. As you look at your reports, Tommy, the ones that you have, do you have any holistic reporting like daily that tells you which reports are used how often?
oh yeah. So maybe that's a resolution too, but right now
Well,
no,
actually,
I
that's
have well, I
yeah.
do it weekly, but it's manual because I'm pulling PowerShell, and then I
Okay.
basically it pulls the CSV, then I refresh
Okay.
the report. So I do it weekly,
Yep.
but I would love for this just a PowerShell that pushes every day, and then I got that refresh. So
Okay. I like that one. So that's yeah. Go through the most used reports.
right,
Net new reports, get the new thing, and then revise reports. I
exactly,
like it.
exactly.
Yep, it's good. Seth, let's kick it over to you. What's one of your resolutions?
A lot of mine are going to be admin team kind of related because that's where I spend the vast majority of my time.
Sure.
So the first one is to adjust the Power BI report build process. Like this last year, I created a pretty comprehensive um, guide for the team and all the touch points for new reports, but don't really have anything out there for, updates. Like, and
Mm.
and it depends on the
Oh
update
yeah,
that you have to do certain things, but
Mm.
especially as you get into a lot of where we play, which is embedded reporting for customers
yeah,
or, things like that, where there's a lot more touch pieces, there's a lot more communication that has to go, around across teams. And in order to ensure that you're putting out the best product, and this is still related to any internal reporting as well. It's just you probably have less touch points. Um, but if you want, you know, to Mike your point, start at the end. What is the product that you want to
Yeah,
create, and then
totally.
what are all the steps you need to make, or have in place if many people are doing the same type of thing and you want the same end product, right?
Yeah.
And that's where having a simplified, just directional process, right? Not like the I'm going to control every minute of your day. Give people
right.
flexibility to create solutions, and do things in their own way. But at the end of the day, we should have the same product, right?
Yes.
And so while I had a very, like I said, a very comprehensive one, I think I need to go revisit that and just simplify that for the team to ensure that, here's my checklist. Every single time I do something, I don't have to think about it. Seth already built this, here, bam, 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 bam.
Yep.
Okay, I'm done. Right.
Yeah, that is I think a great point because this is the same. It's pretty much the same reason why my wife and I every spring completely revamp the garage and reorganize it, because
Sure.
it's one thing to have that process to create a new report, but what always happens, both in probably our reports and our own normal process, is there's a lot more ad hoc things that happen, and then that's where decluttering happens, and then that's where things don't follow the right path,
Oh, I
and
totally
then
agree with
that's
you
where
on
the
that one.
complications happen. So having a process, like if we do need to make a minor or major
Yeah.
change, what should we follow so we're still following the right, standards, and also we're keeping the communication out there.
I'm
So
I'm gonna liken this to my office. You guys see my cluttered wall behind me, but what you don't see is there's actually a whole bunch of other clutter around the room, and so it turns into this. Well, I mean, seriously, right?
yeah,
I'm a big proponent. I come from the engineering world. I don't remember the acronym of what it is, but I do remember it's 5S. 5S, the 5S process in engineering. Again, someone on the internet, you can go ahead and find it and throw it in the chat there for me. Uh,
after they buy the wrong book.
after they buy the wrong book for me. But 5S is really around everything in its place, is really what it boils down to. And so everything has a spot. And there are certain things that I have to do. I have a very limited brain. I am very bad at putting things back where they belong. And so what tends to happen is I do things, I work with something, and then I just put it down. And then I forget where I put it. So I've had to instill things like, for me, because I would lose my keys all the time, I actually have to instill like a keychain hook that's by the door. And so when I come in, part of my process is now I put the keys right on the hook, and that's where the keys go. If the keys are not there, they're lost. Literally, that's how bad it is for me. So I've trying to mitigate decision points, but I feel like my report builds sometimes do the same thing, right? Everything's nice and clean and tidy, things are going well. Life gets busy. It's crunch time, and I start building stuff, and I just start putting things places. And I now going through some of my older reports, I'm like, wow, why does this report have like 3 hidden tabs? What's on those? Oh, this is just me testing a bunch of things that were junk and not supposed to be there. So it's okay. I've hidden them so they don't publish into the report, but did those tabs really need to be there? And is it adding confusion for the next person who shows up to look at my reports and be like, oh, what is all this stuff? So I'm trying to do a better job of that as well.
And even the design, I look at some of my reports, I might build some random part of the year, and I basically go, how did I let this happen? And it's because that same thing, most of the time you're following the process, and then there's that 1 week or 2 weeks we need to change something.
Yes. Yeah. All the time. And I think that would be one of the, so that's probably leads well into one of my goals. If we're good to transition, I don't want to cut off that conversation.
No, I thought you were already talking about your
goal. Well, in an effort to get through 5, I think we're gonna have to.
I don't have 5, that's for sure. So one of the ones I think is important for me is to, a lot of times what I'll do in reports is I will just make a report and I'll just drop out tabs, and I'll have page 1, page 2, page 3. It just kind of makes tabs and names them by page. I think it's important to just kind of be a little bit more descriptive in some of the tab names of what you're building. So for me, I'm trying to be a bit more diligent around naming the tabs appropriate. So if it's the overview page, overviewed, if it's a sales page, be descriptive about the tabs, because even when I'm doing testing of reports, I'm also having other extra tabs in there that people don't know what they're for. So if it's testing, if I'm just testing something on a page, literally make the page and name it testing, so that way I know later on to either hide it or delete it, because it's purely a test page. I do that a lot. I do a lot of just building test stuff to make sure that the data's right, the visuals working the way I want, or whatever. And I'm doing more of that. So I would say I'm gonna do more diligence on that. And in addition to that, I've been somewhat good with this year, but I would like to be better at it. I'm really big about promoting the model and then reports perspective. I think that's any organization that is doing, if you're developing a report for yourself, a report and data model together, probably fine. If it's just you building it yourself. As soon as you introduce larger amounts of data, and I feel like as soon as you introduce another person into the process of building the models and or reports, it's way more helpful to think about one Power BI file as just the model file. And then because of that, I want to do a better job of naming that one page. Hey, this is a model file. This is model only, page intentionally left blank is what I use on that page. And then if there's any kind of increment or refresh, or I don't want you to publish this PBAX file to the service, I actually put in there, do not publish this file to the service. This is using incremental refresh and will accidentally blow away all your data. So,
sounds familiar.
Personal experience on that one. We've had people, lob hours of loading of data away or to delete it because things weren't being backed up. The model wasn't there and published.
Yeah, there's nothing like a junior Power BI resource clicking publish on a massive model.
So simple to do.
I feel like there's
kind of takes down reporting for the day.
Yep. I feel like
that's never happened.
Yeah.
I feel like there needs to be a bit more controls in the service to block against that. Like when I've heard, and again, I'm doing more experimentation around with Tabular Editor. In talking with Gilbert out of I think it's Australia, but once you publish the model to the service, you can basically do everything you want to edit, change, modify that model using Tabular Editor or external tools. So once you've published the model, that could be it. You don't need to do anything else to the model. All of your other changes can be made with other stuff.
It's a really good point. And I think with third-party tools aside, right? Like I would love to see an admin setting, and this is one of those egg on the face kind of things if it actually exists. But like if I label something, this is a challenge. Because if you set a workspace to large model, can't you? Like
Yeah.
everything
Yep.
in there gets
Yep.
You're gonna
large
say the
model.
data set
Like
too.
the
Yeah.
problem, well, maybe it's a good thing, bad thing. Like if I'm saying something's a large model, like give me a control on the data set to say I'm not accepting PBIX publishes, right?
Mhm.
Or in order for a publish to occur, an approval needs to happen
Yeah, do a
for
Power
something,
Automate or
right?
something.
Because what we're talking about are like not uncommon scenarios here
Nope.
Yeah.
This
where
happens all the time.
you have massive models that take 2, 3, 4, 5 hours to refresh if
Yep.
you're going to do the whole thing,
Yep.
or will just flat out blow up
And
because
not load
you
at
you
all.
you
Well,
can't ingest all the data and they have to be
The back end
deployed in
falls over.
incremental steps,
Yes.
right? And then partitions refreshed. You're like, this is what happened, like you're talking about, and there
Yep.
should be no way a junior resource should get themselves in that kind of trouble just by opening a PBIX
well,
file.
maybe you have a dedicated workspace too that is only
I mean,
for these kind of data sets, and they can't publish to that workspace.
but, like, we say junior, but dude,
Yeah,
anybody can make this mistake,
Yep.
right?
I know,
Which
I
is
know.
why
You
in the
can make that
PBIX
mistake at
file,
2 in the morning.
like, what Mike's describing is exactly what we did and implemented in big bold red, like, you will take down the model if you publish
Yeah.
this, right?
It's
Like,
important to do that.
yeah.
Okay, so here's one thing that you can do. There is a setting in admin. This is not, I think, exactly what you're describing, but I think it's similar to it. It says block republish and disable package refresh. I believe it sounds around like disable the package refresh and only allow the dataset owner to publish updates. So what I think you can do with this is if you turn that setting on, the person who's you had to go into the take over that report.
Mhm.
Again, I don't know if this works with like
This
service.
is in the tenant settings,
This is
or
in
is
the,
it API?
this is in the admin settings of PowerBI.com. So you can go turn that on, which means only the author or the owner of that data set could then publish it. So you have at least now one gatekeeper. Anyone else publishing couldn't do it. So that's one thing. I think when you get into larger models and you're actually looking to control more of a metered way of controlling this, you could use this to kind of lock down a little bit.
I hate that setting.
I mean,
It should be an admin group. It should be a group of people that
correct.
have the ability to do this kind of stuff,
Yes.
not an owner of a data set. Like the fact
Yeah.
that it's still owner-fied is
Agreed.
just
Yeah, and it apply. You can't like stick it to like an admin group. You can't put like an admin there's not like a AD group you can stick it to. So there's some limitations of there. I've also seen some people talking about. I mean, people are doing it. Tabular Editor 2, I think, allows for this, but you can take the Power BI model, take the BIM, and you can publish it through DevOps. So you can actually force a DevOps type process where you could actually take the model, decompress it.
We're probably going to implement that
And then push it out through DevOps. And so like only changes to the models going through DevOps goes into like then you've got the metered thing.
Then you have the metered thing, and you take away permissions to production.
Correct. Yeah, and that's what you do need that, right? In certain industries you can't even have access to production. You just can't even touch it.
Yeah.
So I think that makes a lot of sense. And again, this is where I think Microsoft actually has been investing a lot of time, and kudos to Microsoft for like putting a lot of effort around this, because I think Power BI has gotten to the point where it's gotten popular enough that enterprises are like, hey, we need more controls. Yes, this is a very low code, no code solution, but we need better deployment methods than what you have now. We need better help. And this is why I'll put in a pitch in there. Deployment pipelines are getting much better. I really like what they're doing with it, so it's pretty slick. So that could be part of that process.
All right, gents, we're 30 minutes in and we've total one resolution.
This means Tommy has a paragraph in front of him of stuff that he wants to go through. But I mean, Tommy, if you got 10 or your 20 resolutions, by all means.
I'm trying to stall here as long as I can, so I don't have it, because I don't have nearly as many goals as Tommy does.
Let's do three. If we get through three, that's a goal. That is a way to achieve.
Tommy, back to you. What's your second resolution?
In an effort to make sure we stay true to the title name, resolutions.
Okay. More than we've already done 3, so we're good.
Right. Sure. Okay. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. I hope that.
See you guys in 2022.
All right.
Half hour. Yes.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. We're back to the beginning. That's hilarious. One that I think we've talked about before, but I want to spend less time in rabbit holes needlessly. So
not gonna happen.
I know. I
It's
know
calling
it's
out.
not.
I'm gonna call
I
it right
know.
now, Tommy.
Like I'm gonna start going to the gym too. It's the same thing.
You'll do fine till March, and then you'll be like, "What rabbit? Who? Where?
So
What?"
I'll give you an example, literally from Tuesday. So I was working more in Markdown for documentation. I'm working on a few things, and I was like exporting a PDF, but it wasn't turning out the right way. But then I started going on a rabbit hole, like, oh, if you download Pandoc and Python, and I'm like, I don't know Python, but oh wow, you can do all that formatting things. Well, that was a crap show. So my wife comes down like 11 p.m. My eyes are bloodshot. She's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "No, it's
Learning Python.
PDF." Like I can't even explain to her what I'm trying to do. She's like, "Why aren't you writing it in Word?" I'm like, "Just don't worry."
They don't do
So,
Word.
yeah, and then so
I'm sorry, Tommy.
I could have spent.
This is purely my fault. I got to be
know.
honest here. Well, some backstory on this one. Tommy's writing his documentation in Markdown because I told him to, and
Well, I
so
saw you doing it
and
in
I do it.
Houston,
So
and I was
I'm
like,
yeah,
"Whoa, yeah."
and so I'm working a lot more in Git repos. I do a lot of just everything I do. My documentation, everything is all in Markdown because I feel like I want things to be searchable to a much higher degree. And Markdown is just a simple text
Just gotta
file.
focus.
Yeah, it and there's so much less. You can make it look good. There's enough formatting options to give you an appropriate look, but it's
We
not
don't,
so much that you're like, oh my gosh, the margins are always off. I'm not worried
dude.
about all these extra things in Word that are just over. I don't know. There's too much for me. I want to be simple. It needs to be a simple editor, simple writing
Yeah,
things down. And if I'm spending 80% of my time formatting and putting tables in and all this other kind of crap, I'm wasting my time.
and that's happened to me in Word. Like it's the
Yes,
same
same
dang thing
thing.
where I was writing documentation Word, and then I'm like, "Oh, I don't want the style to be that way."
Yeah.
Next thing you know, I literally have 25 tabs open
Yep.
about Microsoft Word styling,
Yep.
and it's like, "What am I doing?" So there are good times for that where I really do learn, but there's definitely a cutoff point. Like
Yeah.
I went down a rabbit hole 2 years ago with PowerShell, so I can actually do some of the scripting
Yep.
for like the activity and how to learn PowerShell, but I can use that now, but there was a cutoff point too where I didn't need to,
Continue learning
then
it.
I'm looking like, oh, what's a third party tool? What's and there's a cutoff point, and this goes back to the optimized time. Like I do the same thing with Power Apps. Sometimes it's good, sometimes there's an like I need to focus on what am I trying to achieve at this moment.
Oh, Power Apps is
And
man, that's another good one too.
yeah, like there's your number two. But where I'm trying to empower like anything project I'm working on, my rabbit hole should be deep enough to what am I trying to achieve right now, have that statement, and then that's when I get out of the hole.
Mm.
So and try to focus
Just
on that.
just I've always known, well, I forget where I learned this, but an alternative to going down the rabbit hole is having a squirrel moment. Like squirrel,
Yep.
right? Like the dog kind of
Yeah.
squirrel. It sounds exactly the same. Oh, I'm
Yeah.
doing this thing, squirrel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like boom, you're gone for a while. We had a guy at work constantly. Like this guy would just squirrel.
Are you talking about me,
Squirrel.
Seth?
No. Although you came a quick second, right?
I think I'm a squirrel in a rabbit hole. That's what
But I think there's a balance there, right?
right.
What you're teasing out there is the balance, right? There's a balance of allowing yourself to have fun by the reason you do some of those things is it's interesting.
I learn.
Yeah. And that's part of, I think it's part of what makes
The
it
blessing and the
interesting.
curse, right.
Yeah, it's a blessing and a curse, but like I feel like it's part of what makes learning fun. It's I can indulge these extra thoughts, go out and explore these new things. For me, I think I've having a conversation with my dad recently just around just what does the world look like for like my son? My son's 11 now, and what's it going to be like for him when he gets into the workforce? We've had these kind of conversations before. Do we do education formally, or do we just let people learn and get certs? And like, what work will they be even doing? I don't even know. Like right now, I feel like this the work that our kids are going to be doing might be totally different than what we're doing right now. If you could tell me right now, when I was growing up, that I would be working in data, only data, like that's an entire career.
It's a thing.
It's a thing. Like I knew like the data warehousing was kind of getting started back, but like, wow, like this is a net new Power BI wasn't even thought of at that point. So like this is a whole brand new area.
Yeah. Is this an exact example of squirrel?
This is exactly an example of Squirrel. I'd illustrated it for you.
That's why we can't go.
I will say, I will say, Tommy, a good thing, a good method to stop the squirrel moments is the same thing you would do in meetings, right? This is why I have a
Agendas.
whiteboard behind me.
Oh yeah.
Is you parking lot the idea. It's like, oh, I really want to do that. I really want to like dive into that, but now's not the time.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna forget it if I don't write it down. So like come back to something that is distracting you from your immediate goal, but that is something that you like want to put on the docket of like going down the road for a little bit.
Yes.
Awesome. Oh, so the squirrel! Literally, this podcast is
nothing but squirrel trails.
It's hilarious.
We should.
I'm just letting you guys know if I didn't stop you, we would still be talking about the admin portal settings.
Oh yeah, we would be. So for sure. Yeah.
Here's the title name.
Yeah, that's why we're good, right? Between the three of us, we can kind of get us into a happy medium and kind of stay on topic for the entire hour.
This is why we'll never run out of ideas.
Too many squirrels. Awesome. I like that. That was a really good one. Seth, on to you.
So yeah, I'm gonna wrap two here real quick.
Whoa.
One is for sure one I want to get implemented, which is automating refreshes out of ADF instead of the Power BI service, because we have a lot of pipelines that are running, and the volumes of data that we have on a daily basis sometimes dictate how long a process runs. So you're trying to add buffer, in your Power BI service refreshes to allow for those processes to complete. However, data timeliness in these big processes for the end reports is of utmost importance, and we want to kick those refreshes off as fast as possible. So we want to dial those back into being part of the process, so that if you have failures, right? So one, it's twofold. One is you kick off the refresh of the model earlier, or without that buffer, and two, in days where it potentially overruns the normal time, you're not reprocessing the model again, right? Which is the other alternative of having, two separate processes generating an outcome of fresh data.
Yep, exactly.
So that's like a real activity that I want to get done in Q1. And then I'm just going to loop this one on, because I don't think that one really elicits any discussion.
I don't know. I think it's a little bit of discussion on just automated refreshes.
All right.
I mean, I would say, how do you do it? Like, for those of you who have not, so people who are using Azure Data Factory today, like, do you know, like, what's the technique you're going to use?
Yeah. We'll figure it out.
That's why
we're gonna figure that out.
Okay. It's part of the API calls, right?
Yeah, it is.
You can initiate an API call from ADF.
Yeah, and they have all that available.
Yeah.
I should sync up with you on that one, Seth, because there's a couple interesting things you can do there with that one. So I've done a couple of these, and I've built some. You can make a call with APIs to go hit the data set. You need to, there's a couple little handshakes you need to do. You need to authenticate. You need to get the token, and then once you have the token, then you can go back. All this can be done in Azure Data Factory with like a web call, so you can just do web calls there. And then an interesting part that we added at the end of this was like a do while at the end. So a do while is do something until something completes. So what you can do is you can trigger the refresh, and you can add a little do loop at the end of it that says check for status of that refresh, and you can kind of keep checking status until the status of that single. So what happens is you make the call to refresh. You get an ID back that says, hey, here's your refresh ID. This is the ID that you're going to be able to use to go back and say, is it done yet? Like, what's the status of that refresh? And so you
can actually generate reporting around completion.
Yeah, completion times, all kind of and you can actually make the pipeline. So the pipeline can sit there and monitor it every 5 minutes until it's actually done. So you'll get like at least a 5-minute increment. So the API to refresh is asynchronous, meaning it calls it, and then the call's over. You don't get to have any knowledge of like when it actually completes. So what we implemented was the call to go refresh the data set, and then a little tiny do while loop that was the end of it that just said check status. Okay, 5 minutes later, check status, check status. And it just kept checking status until the end of the report refresh was done. And then when the status came back a certain message, I can't remember what the message is, but at that point when the message comes back with a certain type of message, you can then say, yeah, the refresh is now either failed or now complete. And then you can message that back into, it's like now a feedback loop back into the Data Factory pipeline. So now you have like another nugget at the end that that says, hey, this is things complete. So now what we do is we have an entire pipeline that runs a refresh, but the input parameter to that pipeline is like the dataset ID. So all we have to do is say, call this pipeline, shove in a dataset ID, and then everything just happens. It just works. And then when that process completes, I know that it's finished the refresh. So anyway, just another little note there on top of that.
Sounds like you're helping me.
Yeah, that's actually very similar to what the
You're welcome.
the scanner API solution we have on the GitHub repo does. And you can actually see it. The interface is it's a Power Automate,
Yep.
and it's basically it initiates a scan, and there's basically a loop to wait for that, and
when the scan's done, you know,
and then it will grab the data.
Correct.
So,
yeah, because once you have to know the scan is completed, and the status of that scan is what you want to go know. Like, okay, the status is actually done. Now I can go hit another API call to say go get the data.
Yeah.
So there's another whole rabbit trail and all that thing, but like that's a good option. Cool.
All right, Mike.
All right.
Oh no, you had two. Seth had two.
We'll go to Mike.
Go ahead, Seth. You want to do the other one? Is it?
Yeah.
You said you were going to dovetail them closer together.
Yeah. It was a bundle.
Just because I wanted to bundle it doesn't mean that they were.
Oh, they're actually related. Okay.
They were actually related.
Okay, sounds good.
Go ahead, Mike.
All right. So, I think one of my items here is I'd like to work on more automation around who's using what reports. So Alex, Alex Dupler from Microsoft gave me some interesting documentation around the log analytics for Power BI. There's a lot going on there, and you can actually do quite a bit of information around just the log analytics piece. So I think there's some richness there. I think there's some scanner API things that are very interesting. I want to build more of like, looking at my organization or walking into organizations, I want more of like a baked solution where I can just say, here's a bit of code. I'm going to drop this in, and it's just going to automate who's looking at what reports are happening, what kind of queries are being run across reports, just some more, I would feel like just basics of like, there's not enough usage information or easy to consume usage information. Whatever, I don't really know what it looks like yet, but I think that's something I need to work on because there's a lot of like parts of this idea that are out there. There's a lot of projects that people have built that are like pieces of what I think I really want, but I want like a consolidated version of like what this looks like and something that's a bit more like, hey, I'm going to come in, I'm going to drop the solution, turn on these things, set up the service principal, put the service principal here, boom, and then it just starts collecting data. And then, you can come back with some reports over top of that and say, here's all the things that are going on kind of in your tenant with your client or whatever is going on.
Is it an expanded version of like the activity log where it's also the one thing we talked about, I think the previous episode, where it's like what visuals are people looking at, or really?
Yeah.
So that's the advanced version. But I actually have a post on Power BI tips from earlier this year on, actually no, it's that was on the business KPIs, but it's built off of the audit log, and that we again pull PowerShell CSV, and then we have the
there's a whole bunch of
so I can see how many people are export. I actually looked at that after our call on Tuesday. It's like, how many exports do we actually have?
And there's actually there's a lot of, so think about all the things you can get, right? There's now Azure logging, so log analytics. So there's Azure log analytics or Power BI log analytics. So that gives you like which queries people are running on which page or which visuals. So you can get that. That's interesting. Then you have reporting around like which reports are being used the most, right? So workspace analytics. And then you also have the log analytics. That's the Azure based log analytics you can turn on, and that gives you like, this report was published, this report was updated, someone downloaded this thing. It's kind of more of the audit log stuff.
That's all in the audit log. So we have all of that. We have our views, but then we have like an admin section that basically looks at like all the things that maybe people shouldn't be doing. Or it's like, how many people analyze in Excel? I can see that per report and trending. So
and I think that's something that's important there, is to like produce that back to like, I use this phrase all the time. You can't change what you don't monitor, right? If you don't have any monitoring around it, I have no way of knowing what the behavior is. So for me, this is kind of like, let's get some baselines around what is happening so I can then put around, well, now we can start making some rules around, is this working? Is this, did we do something that is improving the report performance or improving usage? Are people discovering it or not? We can actually more quantify what's going on with that. And I think, yes, you have like these bigger ideas of like, yes, I want to come in and make an impact, have all these reports getting used more and more. But unless you start someplace, unless you start with a position of here's where we're going to start from, I think you need to have that monitoring in place.
I agree. Awesome. Well, I can start talking to you in 2022 to get that started, at least the first part.
Yeah.
But the log analytics is pretty amazing in terms of seeing the query time. But I know I haven't looked at like what visuals people are looking at.
It's
but
absolutely, when Alex was showing me this
it needs
stuff,
to be like a website, man.
It's impressive what you can get down to. And again, it makes a lot of data, right? If you think about every time you click a button on a page or click something on a page, there's multiple queries that are getting fired off for each visual. So potentially, if you turn on log analytics, I just want to be caution right there. You could spend a lot of money on storage costs because you could be talking gigs per day of information that's being generated in your tenant. But if you're kind of flying blind, if you don't really know what you're doing, like potentially this is a good option for you. So anyways, I feel like that's a missing need and a need that I have in general, but I felt like other people could benefit from an automated solution around that.
And everyone who's listening, just to get started on really tracking that analytics of like, what are people doing?
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of goes into my next one a little. We've talked about this before, but I really want to make this more of a process in like in the coming years. I'm going to deprecate more reports.
Oh, I like that.
So like we've had that conversation, but that's always one of those things like the fear of actually deleting a report, or like, oh, what if we who's looking at it? Shouldn't it always be there? But I need to really put a process in place where I can, again, I have the data and I can get things triggered from it where I can say, I'm going to create a scorecard for it, and that's one of my other resolutions that we'll get
it's probably going to be a goal, right?
But you just basically send an automate when I have 5 like how many reports are now no longer having any views, or 5 been viewed haven't been viewed in 15 days.
Well, are you able to, are you tracking views, or you're tracking like, because people may not be viewing the report, but you also need to track, like, is it being downloaded? Is it going to analyze in Excel?
Yeah, like, we can do all that. Yeah. So, and then actually having a process to deprecate it, where it's like basically send out a message to the stakeholders. Is something you look at?
Yep.
Then it's actually that, where does it go? Like, do I create an archive workspace?
Yeah.
So it lives, it still lives somewhere in the service, but it's not, just to keep everything organized. But that's something I'm definitely going to focus on next year.
That's a good one. I like that one.
So, random question here. Doesn't Power BI automatically disable data sets after a while?
Disable refresh, but not remove them.
Right.
And you don't know which ones are well, it will disable refresh if there's no activity or views on it, but you won't get it. Yeah.
What you're describing.
To an extent, I'm saying I'm deprecating the report will no longer live in a production.
I'm saying it would be an indicator of which reports you would deprecate.
Yep.
Yes.
Any reports that were supposed to be automatically refreshing, which have since been turned off, Power BI automatically knows you haven't looked at it. How long is it? A month? 2 months?
It's like 30 days.
30 days?
It's like 60, actually.
Is it 60?
That much? Yeah. So if the report hasn't been touched in 60 days, it starts turning off automated refresh.
Mm-hmm. Yep. But I don't think for that, you don't think you get a notification. You get a notification if it gets disabled because of errors, but you don't get one because...
No, I think you do.
Okay. But I still want a better process. Like, maybe it's only getting 3 views in 60 days.
Yeah. Like they click on the wrong report.
Right. Seriously, though. Like, so, but if I see 3 views every 2 months, we can either get another report for them to look at that has that 1 or 2 visuals, but I don't need an entire report. They're just for 3 views.
This is spawning another question in my mind now. Do we get data on how long people are in a report?
No.
You don't get it unless you look at the log analytics, right?
Right.
You'd have to
duration.
You'd have to look at like who the user is and what queries are being. Oh man.
Yeah, I don't think that's not even available. Yeah.
But that, like, what was it like? If you're clicking on that and it's just a tab of 10 in a browser, is it still going to track that time that it's open? Like I don't.
Yeah.
I would find problems with that one right off the bat.
Well, I don't know, right? If you're, you would define what is this is what we have to define, right? You define like analytics around what is a session. What would a session look like? Does just clicking on a tab and leaving it open a session, or does actually engaging with the data for a period of time?
But does Power BI actually time out?
Oh, it would.
It kill the session.
It will. If you leave the tab.
Yeah, if you leave the tab open for a long time and come back to it later on, at some point the token for Power BI would time out, I think, and then you
It's
have
the
to
same thing
refresh
like
the
a
page.
website session. If
Yeah,
you move to a different tab, right, and then it'll eventually like,
expire,
yeah.
and you'd have to come back to it. So
But
I think if
yeah.
you, again, thinking high level here, right? What you're probably looking for is if people are using the report, you're probably expecting them to click on some things or do something to
Mhm.
it. So like there's this to borrow from Tommy's, marketing or website experience, right? There's like the click funnel of like
Mhm.
people click into the report, they're clicking on stuff in the thing, they're
You
going to
better name your titles properly.
name your titles properly, and then at some point in time they export data, and then they're done with the report. They either leave it on, open, and
Mhm.
then go move on, or there is a user journey. It's inside
Yeah.
every one of these reports, and I'm not sure we have enough information to really
No.
design what that user journey looks like yet at this point.
Nope.
$1 million idea right there.
There you go. Brought to you by
Defining the user
Power
journey inside a report. Man, that would be huge. Not gonna be
That's
my goal for
I'm gonna
2021,
write
22 because that's gonna be too much work.
I'm gonna write there's a rabbit hole. I'm gonna write that as a topic though for 2022 that
That
we'll
is a good
never get
topic.
to. Awesome.
All right, Seth,
All
on
right.
to you.
I'm gonna begin the like high level architecture and implementation strategy for the adoption framework within my
Mhm.
existing organization. So the specifics that everybody has to address that are related to the company they work for, the company that they're engaged with. There's a lot of different areas of adjustment that need to be made
Mhm.
based on a lot of the conversations that we've had. So actually putting into practice in this use case this year, starting those.
So, Tommy, you said there was an interesting website you found around
Yeah.
adoption.microsoft.com?
Yep, adoption.microsoft.com. We were literally just talking about it this morning, and this is actually one of mine as well, Seth, to kind of really get that rolled out, because I think the biggest problem with a lot of these, especially what we've talked around data governance, is it's a great idea, but the problem is it involves people. This is not something you can learn on your own and then just do. You need to get people to really buy in, and you have to get their ideas. You have to set a schedule and an agenda. And I think our biggest struggle is, what does that look like? Like, how often do you meet? What do you talk about during those meetings? Like, what does it actually look like? So I someone recently shared with me, there's a Power Platform adoption workbook compared to a roadmap, and it's basically, and I'll send this. Actually, yeah. I don't know
Uh,
if you have it up, Mike.
I got it up right here.
Yeah.
I'll throw.
So
First thing I'm gonna do
and
is I'm gonna show. So let's just explain what the
yeah,
adoption.microsoft.com is. This is a website to kind of pick. It kind of helps you figure out what it has two ways of looking at the lens of you and your organization. It goes by roles. Like I'm a business user, I'm a champion, I'm a developer, I'm an IT professional. It kind of looks at like these personas and says these are the kind of personas that are out there. And then you can actually go by product. And so you can say, okay, I'm a Power Platform person, or I'm a Microsoft Teams or a SharePoint person. One of the ones that is missing here, which is interesting, actually is Power BI. Power BI is not on the list. However, I think a lot of these concepts are very transferable and potentially very interesting to go through and think through as well. So I'm dropping the link in the chat window now. It's called adoption.microsoft.com. Okay, sorry, Tommy, go ahead.
yeah. So, anyways, they have like the actual, like, what does a calendar look like for a center of excellence?
Yep.
So I agree. I think that's the hardest thing, is how do you write your own vision, get that buy-in, then actually start scheduling meetings where people understand what you're trying to achieve.
Yep.
That's huge. So I agree with you, Seth. Like that's a huge resolution, but I think a huge need.
But I like how this breaks it down too, even. Sorry, Seth, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say it is a huge need. It's one of those like side project kind of things when your organization isn't pushing this, right?
Yes.
Like, but at the same time, it's also one of those larger business problem solutions that like could make a big impact, right?
Yep.
Like the more time invested in ensuring your organization works with data and reporting in a more efficient manner, like the y- the multiplier is there
Yeah.
exponentially, right? Like just instilling parts of these pieces of the roadmap could have significant impact on business related to, reduction in time, across the organization. So I'm gonna track it specifically around some of the things that I do and build, and maybe we can talk about them
Yeah.
through 2020 to 2022. Um,
To 2020,
but the fact that I'm
Today,
like
Junior.
saying 2022
yeah,
as an actual
2022.
year I'm going to be living in is still, I guess the older you get, maybe it's more bizarre.
So I really like this website. It's very interesting, and there's actually some really interesting links that are on there. I'm actually clicking through some of them
Mhm.
right now. One of them is, and I'm clicking on the Power Platform. So part of the framework that they're giving here, if you pick on a tool, it gives you like key buckets: how to get started, how to engage your organization, how to train your organization, how to then build champions, and then how to secure your environment. And I think this seems like a very logical progression that I see, or things that you would want to know about when you start working with these tools. Um, we have, I think, on the podcast talked a lot about from a Power BI. How do you build or secure your environment, and potentially like around training and best practices, right? One thing I don't think we've talked a lot about, and this might be a topic for future portions here, is how do you build champions? How do you build champions in other portions of your organization? How do you identify them? How do you pick them up? And how do you grow them into like the people that are going to be able to support, something like a hub and spoke approach where there's a hub of people that are kind of centralized to this process, and the spokes are becoming these other entities across the organization that can pick up the analytical torch and help you develop and build things. Really good. I'm going to throw a couple more links in here in the chat window.
Like even
On
the layout for the web page for Power Platforms, like I might use that for our knowledge center.
I think
So
honestly, I'm looking at this going, there's a lot of things I think would be very transferable to building out your
Mhm.
own knowledge base. They even have a link here to one of the links here is the Microsoft Power Platform Center of Excellence COE Starter Kit. And I don't
Mhm.
know exactly where that is for
It's
Power
a
BI yet,
yeah,
but
it's a solution. So
it goes through like, here's the overview, here's an admin, here's how to govern, and here's how to nurture. And I think that's really appropriate. Like those topics are spot on for like putting these tools in place and helping them grow and mature inside your organization.
Yep.
So I'm going to wimp out here. I'm going to transition to my last topic here so we're running out of time. But I'll say my last one here is this year I'd like to um, dedicate more time, or at least a metered amount of time, to learning and training. So that may be publicly, that may be, building my internal training. I'm moving more into like the management role, like Seth is in right now, where I have people underneath me that I've got to educate and train and get, help them out. So get them to a level where we need them to be for, consulting engagements or whatever. But as I bring on more people, I've told this to a lot of people. Everything we know is in the head, in the brain. What I know is that's what people pay me for. Like it's, that's what's in here. What I know is why I get paid that salary rate that I get when I work on engagements, right? So I'm finding that I can't scale anymore as one person, and I need to be able to scale to multiple people. So I need to start thinking about what am I doing and building process around quickly leveraging other individuals and teaching them what I know so that they can scale out and do work the way I would have done it, or what I've learned, and instilling that in them. So I think more of my time is going to be around just dedicating time to learning, doing more training. I'm hoping that will turn into, more publicly facing YouTube videos around other areas. I've been doing this kind of light series where it's like a 5 to 10 minute video where I learned something. I hop on a quick video call and explain what I learned and how I did it. Something very, digestible. So part of my goals for next year will be just to kind of continue to share that knowledge, both to the Power BI community and more internal to my organization as well. So
man, I agree. I actually had that as well. Like I want to
yeah,
take all this
take my goals,
knowledge.
Tommy. Okay, I see how it is.
Yeah,
Can't make up your own.
exactly.
Got to take mine. Yeah, that was mine too.
Well, I mean, listen, when you come out with the goal that you come out with, Mike, I'm only inspired.
All right,
So,
baloney,
okay.
baloney.
But it's true though. I mean, I think that I don't think that's just done enough in organizations where we learn all this stuff. Also, like, yeah, I know this information, but that doesn't really help the organization or who you're working with that as a whole.
Don't
How
tell
do
me
you
you're too
organize?
busy to learn. Do
Yeah.
not, man.
Yeah.
Nothing,
I
nothing.
I,
Wow, like nothing bothers me more than
I
that
didn't
that
say,
phrase. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
hey,
That
why
one.
can't I help? Let's learn this new thing to go faster. No, I'm too busy. I can't do that. I'm going to continually do my existing process because I don't want to. I don't have time to learn it. I'm like, what the heck are we talking? Like,
but
if we're that
yeah.
level, something's awry here.
But it's not just that though, right? I mean, that's obviously a piece of it that I obviously agree. And every time I even bring up anything related, I feel like you're getting angry at me, which it's like shoot the messenger. but part of it though too is the knowledge on like a company specific, information.
Yes.
Like it's not just about someone being empowered to learn, like let's say power apps, but what are things that we do in an organization? What data do we pull from? Where is that centralized information that I know that other people who are working in this space know these are the tables we're using. Here are the official references we're using.
If we're
And
doing our job right, we should be making life easier for everyone
Right.
downstream of us, right? If we're not doing a good job,
Yep.
like we should be working with teams and helping them to produce tables of information that they need to do their daily job on. Like you've got to be able to do that. And if you're not doing that, I'd maybe argue, are you actually being effective as a, data developer? Is that really happening? It's a good point.
completely agree.
Cool.
So I have a quick one, and then we'll kind of round out.
Nope, that's what 3 for everyone. Or you're done, Tommy. You're cut off. There's
well,
it.
you're gonna love
I'm
this
just
one.
teasing.
I will get Mike to start using scorecards.
That's not gonna happen. That's gonna be a burn. You've been
Checking
burned that
on
goal.
that one in 364 days of 2022.
Yeah. You'll see.
Well, if you're doing that, I'm gonna get you to use deployment pipelines then.
I actually had Charticulator on here too, but that's fine. I have no problem using deployment pipelines because I see the value in it.
Charticulator's doing good, man. There's a lot of people creating like other people are seeming to latch on now and creating content. I had an individual reach out to me and say, "Hey, I made this new kind of visual. It's a horizontal waterfall chart."
Oh, I saw that.
Thought it was pretty cool. I said, "Hey, you want to share your template?" I helped him put it out on the GitHub repo, so I thought that was pretty cool as well. So I think that the community is really picking up Charticulator. People are finding value from it.
Listen, and I will be the advocate for scorecards because, like I said, I'm diving more into it. Obviously, it doesn't have everything yet, but man, already from what I'm finding from a true dashboard, it's I think what's needed. So I'm actually speaking at the Seattle user group in January, and I think Chicago I'll probably do goals as well. But someone needs to spread the word about this or just see the use cases, because unlike a dashboard where you just pin visuals and you're kind of fine.
Yep.
There is certain planning that needs to go into your scorecards and your metrics beforehand. So to make it really effective.
Yeah, I think that's a good topic. I think another gentleman, Treb, from out in Seattle. I'm not sure what he runs. He's a company. I think he also has like he likes goals a lot too. And he's been like, ask me about how to implement goals or best practices and goals. Right. I think that's a newer topic that people don't maybe know how to leverage yet. All right.
Well,
with that, I think we've officially burned, wasted, educated. I don't know what you want to call it. Another hour of your week. We appreciate your time. For those of you who listen to the podcast, thank you very much for listening. We appreciate your listenership. Thank you very much for a wonderful 2021 and looking forward to a really great 2022 with you guys. Our only ask, as this is, we don't promote this. We just kind of like, we just need your help. We need your help to be able to share this with somebody else. So if you don't mind, if you like this, found the content was fun, engaging, you laughed a little bit, just share it with one other person. And that's all we ask for. Tommy, where else can you find the podcast if you're not watching live?
So your podcast is available anywhere. It's available on Apple and Spotify. If you are listening right now on one of those platforms and you want to join the conversation, make that your resolution for the next year.
Oh, it's a good
join
one.
The conversation live, and so you can join us every Tuesday and Thursday, 7:30 a.m. Central. We have some already great topics scheduled for January, and we will see you.
Some bad ones too.
Some bad ones, as always.
Like 50-50.
So, a lot of squirrels. So
a lot of squirrels.
So we will see you next year, but again, we'll see you on Tuesday.
See you on Tuesday and next year. Thank you all, and we'll see you next year. Thanks. Bye.